New York Times breaks an interesting story about ghost money going to the government of Afghanistan from the CIA, of course. They explain, for more than a decade, wads of American dollars packed into suitcases, backpacks, and on occasion, plastic shopping bags have been dropped off every month or so at the office of Afghanistan's president, courtesy of the Central Intelligence Agency. And in fact, Khalil Rahman, who was Karzai's deputy chief of staff from 2002 to 2005, says, "We called it ghost money, it came in secret, and it left in secret." Well, now it is no longer secret. We know all about it. And apparently we've spent tens of millions of dollars with very little accountability. What's interesting is at the same time, apparently the Iranians were trying to bribe the Karzai government as well. They would pull up in a Jeep filled with cash, and then we would pull up in a Jeep filled with cash. And Karzai would take both of the sets of money and then go, ah! And he would often screw both Iran and the United States. Well, that's a good racket if you can get it, right? But the CIA, which I remind you is the Central Intelligence Agency, would go, oh golly gee, we couldn't control Karzai? Okay, let's give him more money. Former American official has said the biggest source of corruption in Afghanistan was the United States. Now that's an American official saying that. So we brought the corruption. All right, that's great. And New York Times explains the cash has fueled corruption and empowered warlords. And they further explain that the cash does not appear to be subject to the oversight and restrictions placed on official American aid to the country. So the CIA gets to go house and they don't have any accountability, and it all happens in the dark in the middle of the night, and you know the night is dark and full of terrors. So oops, where did your money go? Oh, I don't know. There's no accountability. Sad day for you. Every other dollar has to be tracked, but not the CIA money. And what did you get me for that? Nothing, if you ask me. In fact, Hamid Karzai, back in 2010, said when they were caught getting the money from Iran, quote, the United States is doing the same thing. They're providing cash to some of our offices. But in some ways, you know, Karzai is smart that he's taking both their money and not doing anything that they want, either side, the U.S. or Iran. In other ways, he's an idiot. He just always admits things he's not supposed to admit. I mean, the last month he came out and said, oh, yeah, the U.S. and Taliban have been having secret negotiations. Don't say that. Look, I know who doesn't want you to say that, the CIA. And they keep giving you all that money, and you keep screwing them over. This is so unproductive, so stupid. Mr. Salahi, now this is a guy who ran the National Security Council, and the money would flow through him. And as I'm reading the article, I'm thinking, yeah, this is the guy who's probably the most corrupt guy in the country, okay? So we find out later in the article, Mr. Salahi, though, is better known for being arrested in 2010 in connection with a sprawling American-led investigation that tied together Afghan cash smuggling, Taliban finances, and the opium trade. Oopsie doopsie. You know what happened to him? The FBI got him, man. He was corrupt. He was dealing in opium. We were against that. He was released within a couple of hours. Why? The CIA called Obama. Obama called Afghanistan and said, my bad and my mistake. I didn't mean to arrest the most powerful guy in the country. And then Salahi wants to rub it in. He gets out and says, quote, I am an enemy of the FBI and a hero to the CIA. And just to rub in things a little further, Kabul put out a statement after the New York Times story. They said, the CIA cash has been used for different purposes, such as in operations, assisting wounded Afghan soldiers and paying rent. The assistance has been very useful, and we are thankful to them for it. Wounded soldiers! Wounded soldiers! That's a good one! So it was mainly sent to the warlords to buy their allegiance. And of course, I love the part in the New York Times article, they're like, well, there's been no evidence yet that Hamid Karzai has kept any of the money personally. Okay, look, they don't have the evidence on it yet, but I got a newsflash for you. He kept some of the money personally. Of course he did. It's unaccountable money that they hand to him literally in a plastic bag. Oh, no, no, no. He's going to make sure that it goes to wounded soldiers. Please. Now, one last thing on this that's actually the most important thing. Look, the CIA, I've realized, is horrible at its job. And this is just the latest example of it. I mean, to me, I couldn't believe that we went about 10 years before we got Osama bin Laden after 9/11. I thought, how does the CIA not have anybody inside the upper echelon of Al-Qaeda? I thought maybe they were, of course they're not going to tell us if they did, right? But here's what would tell us: a bullet in bin Laden's head about 8 years ago. Or Ayman al-Zawahiri, the number 2 guy, who's now the number 1 guy at Al-Qaeda. We still haven't caught him. 9/11 was in 2001. CIA, where the hell are you? And by the way, you're also the guys who, look, I know at least you gave a memo to Bush saying they're coming, right? But you didn't prevent 9/11. We spend all this unaccountable money at the CIA, and we get very little results in return. And by the way, another epiphany is that they don't really work for us. Look at all the damage they've done throughout the world in decade after decade. So we overthrew, the CIA did most of it was the democratically elected president of Iran. We installed the Shah, and then we got, of course, Muslim fundamentalism as a backlash, and we got Ayatollah Khomeini. How'd that work out for us? And we destroyed our relationship with Iran. But, it wasn't for the United States of America. We didn't gain that much from that. And did we get the oil? Did we take, like the old imperialism? Okay, we overthrow the Iranian government. We now have Iran? No. Okay, we don't do that kind of imperialism. We now have their oil? No. What do we have? We got the oil contracts for the oil companies. And when you see that, and you see it happen over and over again in Latin America and Africa, and in Africa we get rid of a democratically elected leader and we put in Mobutu Sese Seko, one of the worst dictators that continent has ever seen, and the CIA gives them money for decades and decades. And who did it help? It helped the multinational corporations who wanted deals in those countries, and they didn't want leaders who nationalized the oil or who wanted to keep the resources of their countries for themselves. And then you realize the CIA doesn't work for us. The CIA is a branch of multinational corporations, and their job is to impose corporate imperialism throughout the world. So that's why they're not productive, and often, like in Afghanistan, counterproductive, because they're not working for us. And you think, how could they be in power all this time and get all this money? Because they are doing their job for the corporate powers. You need somebody who's actually looking out for the people of their country deposed. Don't worry about it. The CIA is here for you so that you can go exploit that country. It doesn't help the United States of America. It almost never has. What it does is it helps those corporations rob the world blind. So I got no interest left in the CIA. If they actually did intelligence work for us and they helped keep us safe, then I would be interested. But that's not what they're in the business of doing. And it's more than past time we realize that.